Hello and good evening and welcome to tonight's special edition of the Regeneration, Culture and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Just as we start, have we got any apologies for absence at all? Councillor Jones?
Yes, Chair, I'm substituting for somebody who I think is Councillor Cook. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor MacDonald?
I'm substituting for Councillor Peake.
Excellent. Councillor Brown?
I'm substituting for Councillor Maritime.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Brake?
I'm substituting for Councillor Pembroke.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Councillor Kemp?
I'm substituting for Councillor Filmer.
Excellent, thank you all. And we have a final substitution, but that substitution is running slightly behind, which is Councillor Prenter, and if I've got it right, I think he's substituting for Councillor Animation. Okay, thank you for that. Are there any, I don't think there are any urgent matters. Can I ask if there are any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the record, I'm a Chair of Trustees of the Inspire Partnership, which has 9 schools in the Trust, of which Delta Academy is one. I've considered tonight whether I have a pecuniary interest or an OSI, and I have concluded that I have neither. Whilst I may have an interest, a member of the public with knowledge of the relevant facts would not reasonably think that my interest is so significant that it would likely to prejudice my judgment of the public interest. On that basis, I shall participate in the debate and vote on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will declare I'm an officer at Transport for London. My day job involves assessing school streets as part of my work, but I do not state whether I'm in favour or not of them, more what their impacts are. As this is in London, I have been advised that this wouldn't impact my ability to take part and chair this discussion. Okay, so now on to item 4, the call-in. We're here tonight. So tonight we are here to discuss the call-in of Cabinet Decisions 135/2004 to 144/2024, where we will decide either to accept the Cabinet decisions and take no further actions, or refer the decisions back to the Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out the reasons for referral back, or refer the decisions to full Council for consideration. We're going to have a number of speakers tonight, and I can see many people in the public gallery who are interested in this matter and will be participating. First of all, I'm going to hand over to our officers, in particular to Ruth Delou and Alex Constantinos, to explain the School Streets Tranche 2 and how that fits into the Safer, Healthier Streets programme, and provide a context to this discussion tonight.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also to the committee for this opportunity to talk about a subject we're passionate about and are super proud of as a team. Whilst I'm thanking people, I would also like to acknowledge the speakers who are here tonight and who have submitted their feedback in writing. I intend to clarify the process as we go through when we progress school streets, but it is worth me highlighting now that we are not far enough along the process to accept any formal representations against any schemes. We will get to that stage when we enter statutory consultation, but I want to emphasise that we will aim to work with schools, parents and residents to co-design the schemes, and all of this takes place before any scheme reaches statutory consultation. If I may, I'd like to frame the debate with some context first. School Streets is a part of the Safer, Healthier Streets Road Safety Programme, which was commissioned back in 2002 to 2003. Included in the programme was also red routes and moving traffic schemes, which is in effect just camera enforcement of existing restrictions. Zigzag lines outside of schools were implemented back in 1964, at which point there were fewer than 7 million cars on our roads. To put that into context, we now have over 38 million cars on our roads. Statistics from the Department of Transport reveal that 14% of children killed on Great Britain's roads in 2018 were between the morning school run to 7 to 9 a.m. and 23% after school between the 3 to 5 p.m. Sadly, these statistics are all too common for Medway. Over the 3-year period up to the end of December 2023, there were 223 collisions which involved 248 of our children, these casualties up to the age of 16. The principle behind school streets is to temporarily suspend the access roads around schools so that children can walk and cycle safely at drop-off and pick-up times. This, in general, creates a safer environment for all, particularly our vulnerable road users like pedestrians and cyclists. Although we understand that not all children can take advantage of walking and cycling, the vast majority can, and the idea is to encourage those who can to change their behaviours and the behaviours of their parents and carers. It's important to be clear at this point that the school streets in question are not physically closed off with barriers, as we must ensure that residents, teaching staff and children with special educational needs, and all of those on our exemption list, are still able to gain access via cars and coaches. We have already implemented 7 school streets this year, and the feedback we have has been very positive. Indeed, we have had national recognition being featured on BBC News. Active Travel England directly praised the Medway's bold and innovative approach through introducing 7 school streets earlier in the year, and our positive statement of intent through proposing a further 9 locations as part of this second tranche. We have recently been awarded the Road Safety Award from the City Transport and Traffic Innovation publication for these schemes. However, we're not complacent and intend to review the outputs of the existing sites once we have a full year's data in spring 2025. This will, of course, be shared with members. As I said at the start, I want to share with you the process we follow to progress a school street. I think this is an important part of tonight's meeting, as I want to demonstrate where we are with the schools in question tonight. Stage 1 involves us looking at locations and deciding if a school street would potentially benefit the children. Although we are not obliged, we have a selection criteria and framework in place to select a school street. We, as a project team, have ensured each location is subject to an extensive review. The Department of Transport and Active Travel England published their National School Streets Guidance, and this is something that I'm pleased to say we are already aligning closely with. The national guidance acknowledges that the proposal to introduce a school street may arise from several sources, and that individual authorities are best placed to determine the appropriate selection criteria for their area. In Medway, selected sites are often a combination of factors, some of which include local officer expertise, road safety, modal shift opportunities, moving from car to walking and cycling, active travel initiative participation, including school travel plans, site suitability, school community requests and public support, consultation feedback, and known parking congestion issues. We then draw up an indicative design and engage with the schools, parents and local residents to gain their thoughts. This can lead to some changes in design and informs if the location is indeed suitable. The feedback is then taken to Cabinet, which we did in November, and with recommendations to progress the school streets. Following any agreement to proceed, the work then starts in earnest, and where necessary, we work with schools, residents and parents to agree to final design, operating times, etc. Once we feel we have a scheme to formally consult on, we will start a statutory consultation process. Following statutory consultation, any objections or formal comments will be considered and changes made if required before the scheme is then taken to implementation. This isn't the final stage, as we continue to monitor any schemes as we have done with Tranche 1. I would like to clarify, we are at the very start of this process for the schools in question tonight. We have not carried out a statutory consultation, nor has Cabinet given us the go-ahead to implement any schemes. At this stage, we have just engaged with stakeholders over the initial design. As the Cabinet's decision was called in, we have suspended all work on the current schemes and will not move to further design discussion where necessary, until we receive approval to do so. If and when this happens, we will be more than happy to work with schools, parents and residents to discuss design and implement as appropriate. In March 2023, Medway received an external grant allocation from the Department of Transport and Active Travel England to support the introduction of 7 school streets in Medway. These launched earlier in the year on the 11th of March 2024. As I mentioned, we need to acknowledge that the number of vehicles on our roads nationally has increased substantially from less than 7 million in 1964, when school keep clear restrictions were introduced, to over 38 million. We are simply not prepared to adopt a do-nothing approach, and particularly where the interests of our children and young people travelling in Medway are concerned. Funding from Active Travel England has made it possible for Medway to take a proactive approach to take forward the School Streets programme as a response to the modern-day challenges we face. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to go to the opposition spokesman to explain their reasons for their calling, and then after that I will be calling public speakers to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes after that. So I'm going to pass to the opposition spokesman, Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ruth, for your presentation. The School Street scheme has a number of aims, if I understand this correctly. The first is to reduce road collisions with young people, and the second is to improve air quality around the schools. As with the first tranche, the Council has failed to present any data on either road traffic accidents or air quality for the first tranche or the second tranche. My own research threw up today a paper from ROSPA, which is slightly out of date, but I think it's still relevant, talking about road traffic accidents involving young people. Unfortunately, the national data starts at everyone under the age of 16. But this report, which I'm happy to leave with you, clearly states that the group most at risk are 12-year-olds and over. All of the Tranche 2 schemes that you've set out today are for primary schools. The one I know best of all, Fairview Community Primary School, because it's in my ward, and by the way, no officers contacted me to talk about the design of that scheme, which I have to say I'm quite disappointed about. As I understand, there have been no road traffic accidents for 3 or 4 years involving children during term time, and I think this is the key point, is during term time. The other important issue here for me is one of principle, is that the School Street scheme necessitates residents being inconvenienced. We have an exemption scheme, which is a bureaucratic instrument to allow residents to leave. But actually, for me, if we're going to stop people going about their lawful business, we have to show a gain from doing that. There has to be a trade-off. You can't just stop people leaving their houses, because you think or you hope that you're going to prevent any accidents. I think the other important thing is the way the scheme operates and what's actually happening on the ground with Tranche 1. So what we're seeing is parents turning up before the scheme starts to drop their children off. People sit in their cars. I've heard anecdotal stories of children having their breakfast in their cars because they want to get there before the exemptions start. And then, of course, once they drop their children off, they're free to leave. So they're free to drive off because they're already in the area before the scheme actually starts, which, when you think about it, it seems slightly comical that this is then supposed to be preventing road traffic accidents involving primary school children. So I think for us, we very much want to see policy enacted that is based in evidence. I think the Council failed to provide any evidence of an issue to start with or where the improvement. If you're going to measure air quality improvements, what's the starting point? because you've not done any work to measure air quality before the scheme started. My experience of the tranche 1, and I'd only just been elected as a councillor for Hempstead and Wigmore, and Hempstead School was on that list, and I'm pleased to see that, you know, with some reasoning, much around the arguments I presented tonight, that Hempstead School didn't go to Cabinet. But I wonder whether you can tell us how many of the tranche 1 that did get approved by Cabinet subsequently fell out through the statutory consultation process. Because my gut feeling is, and I think the evidence will demonstrate, that once it gets beyond Cabinet, every school is going to be approved. And the detail is actually in the design of the scheme, not whether it's actually going to show again. And my final point, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak, is at the end of the day, we're spending government money. We're not spending Medway's money. And if the government money didn't exist, once again, I wouldn't mind betting that we wouldn't be doing this. So for me, that is something else that I think we need to take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Okay, I'm going to start calling public speakers. You will have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak, and we'll have a timer up on the screen just to do that. First, we will call Councillor Trevor Clark. Then we'll call Michelle Atkins, followed by Jim Kehoe, David Stubbs, Mark Snoswell and Stuart Bourne. So, Councillor Trevor Clark, would you be able to come to the microphone? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Clark. I can see you just getting ready, so you can have 5 minutes to have your input now. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm speaking tonight as the ward member for Fort Halstead School, and in particular with reference to the Halstead schools. Obviously, 5 minutes prevents me covering everything that we want to bring up, but I hope members have taken note of the supplementary agenda comments, particularly from the St William of Perth's team, on the legal aspects of the proposal, some of which are pertinent here with Halstead. Halstead is also a school, I'm pleased to say, and certainly the last 5 years, has had no child casualty accidents. I'm asking you members to recommend to pause the Halstead School Street proposal before you. The background to this was an initial quite risible proposal to block off part of Barbary Avenue outside the school. The school had not been involved in the proposal and only became aware when it was published. It caused a lot of disquiet in the community, and the school had to deny they were behind it. Respondents in the first consultation, whether that's a statutory one or not, I don't think residents are clear that that is the case. They've been asked to respond, so they treat that as a consultation. They were overwhelmingly against it, and it's particularly its potential to gridlock the entire Davis estate. It was so glaringly obvious, it was surprising the scheme had ever been brought forward. At a subsequent meeting following that with the school, from which local community and the ward member were excluded, a number of proposals were put to the highways team, and it was agreed that they would curate a new scheme and come back to the school with it and talk further. This did not happen, and the school only found about the plans that are before you when it was published in the Regen Scrutiny papers, which said once again the school were in favour of it. The executive head was forced to write to every parent explaining this was not the case. It is really quite appalling that both times Halstead School proposals were presented to the public with claims that the school were behind it was not true. The proposals do not consider the flow of traffic around the Davis estate. Most of you probably know the Davis estate. It's situated in the Halstead Valley going up and down. There's only one northbound exit at Shirley Avenue for residents wishing to get into Medway, for the hospitals, for work, other schools, secondary schools, etc. The other exit at Watson is southbound to the Lord Lees roundabout, and at that time of the day, everybody avoids that. So anyone going to work or hospital from the south side of the estate would have to circumnavigate the whole estate to exit at Shirley and will increase traffic significantly on the adjacent streets of the school. No traffic count or directional flow data has been provided. A gridlock point at Crescent will be created. There is nowhere for the displaced traffic to drop off the children. The distances that most travel and the steepness of the roads on the estate mean there will be no fewer journeys that anyone thinks will happen. And there are no proposals nor any additional crossing points or lollipop patrols being proposed for those neighbouring streets, which will become significantly more dangerous. If this indeed is about children's safety, these factors must be considered. And again, as already been alluded, as to air quality, again, there is no data. And since it's inconceivable there will be fewer journeys as a result, where would this play? Councillor Field, colleagues, I have sat where you are. I know the pressure that you're put under on scrutiny from portfolio holders and cabinet, and sometimes even from officers. But these issues, as has been rightly said by the Deputy Director, are too important to be rushed through in an ill-conceived and haphazard manner. Many on the Facebook group locally and who have been speaking to me as residents see this as just another tax grab. That is not the narrative that we want around safety of school children, and it is onus is on the council to change that narrative, and to do so it needs to take account of the individual needs of each of these school streets, which begins with research. It needs to be properly considered, and in many cases a camera is not the answer. A camera issues a fine, it doesn't stop a vehicle, and if it is an illegally driven vehicle it certainly wouldn't be stopping that. If we're going to do this, please, let's do it properly, and let's look at the areas that we're putting it, and when we do so, consider that wider issue of the impact on the whole community. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. The next speaker to call is Michelle Atkins. Okay, you have 5 minutes to make your representation. Thank you.
Good evening. I've been in education for over 20 years, and keeping children safe has always been of paramount importance to me. I'm representing the residents in the proposed area around Fairview School. We think we're rather unique in that, with the map of the proposed scheme, Jury Drive being here and our roads being around, there is no other access for us in these particular roads. With most of the other schemes, from what I can understand and what I've seen, people can get out of their roads another way. They can go the long way round. We don't have that as an option here. Jury Drive is the only way out. For us, at the moment, people do park in our roads, mainly safely. We don't have too many issues. I've only lived there for nearly 3 years. My neighbours have been there for 37 years. Never had any problems with people parking. They generally park respectfully, and although it is busy for about 10 minutes in the afternoon, there aren't any particular issues. I appreciate that that may not be the same in Jury Drive, where the actual school is. One of the reasons we feel that the scheme would not work in our area is that if you stop the parents from parking in these roads, they are going to be forced out onto more major roads such as Maidstone Road and Bredhurst Road. Maidstone Road is a major road. It already has lots of speeding cars and people that are speeding offences there. I appreciate that there is a lollipop lady, so crossing the road may be okay, but it's already a very busy road with parents parking there, and the problem will get worse. The parents will not have anywhere else to park. They will go to the 2 main roads that are closest to them. We already see children alighting cars roadside, and my fear is that if they do this on Maidstone Road, there will be a road traffic collision. As far as we're aware, there have been no road traffic collisions in our surrounding area to the school, nothing that we can find any information on. I spoke to the school and they couldn't give me any information that there has been one either. The last reported one was over 40 years ago. The other thing that we think makes our area quite unique is the demographic, and that's not being taken into consideration at all. Most of the residents in this area, the properties are mainly bungalows, and most of the residents, I don't have an exact figure, but my guess would be over 70% are retired people, elderly people, often infirm, have ailments, need to go to hospital, everything else. They rely very heavily on their family and friends to help and support them. Some of them do have carers that come in to help them on a daily basis, and I appreciate that carers, registered carers, will be able to apply for an exemption. The problem arises if the person is relying on someone that is their family that will not be able to be exempt. They won't be able to come into this zone to actually carry out their daily care. Also, if the registered carer is off sick, which happens often, any substitute carer coming in will also not be able to enter that restricted area. As I said, many of these people need to go off to hospital appointments. My neighbour just across the road is currently suffering from cancer, relies on his son coming in to take him to his appointments. He cannot walk out of the restricted area to meet his son elsewhere. Neither can he actually determine when or where his appointments are going to be. He has to go in the time that's stated. We'd like to know how you foresee these kind of issues being resolved. How are the elderly going to be able to go about their daily lives? Because at the moment, many people feel that they are being discriminated against. Their daily lives will be impacted. As I said, the catchment area for Fairview School, there are currently 672 children there. The catchment area is widening all the time. This year they've offered places to pupils in Sittingbourne, Darland, Lower Twiddle. These are not going to be people that can feasibly walk, so the traffic is not going to suddenly disappear. They need to park somewhere, and like I said, you are going to be pushing these people to park on major roads, and we are very scared that there will be an accident that happens that will be very detrimental to the children. So we don't feel, for us, it fits at all.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jim Kehoe.
Evening.
Good evening. Thank you for coming to speak. As per other speakers, you will have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for considering this item today. My focus is on St William of Perth School at Cannon Close in Rochester. I'm a Medway resident and have a grandchild who's a pupil at the school, and I regularly experience the current school circumstances at Cannon Close in support of my family. My principal concern is simple. This proposal is set to worsen the safety of people travelling to and from the school, despite the name of the programme. Cannon Close is a cul-de-sac where pupils can arrive and depart in safety. Vehicle speeds are low. Maidstone Road, by complete contrast, is a busy main road with a history of accidents in the vicinity of the school and evidence of numerous speeding offences. Please exercise your option tonight to refer this Cabinet decision preferably to full council, as this decision will have an important and long-lasting impact on the locality, and the implications of an unfounded decision could be very serious. I'll just mention 1 or 2 points now from my written submission. Safety. Local accident data shows that, obtained via the council, show there's been at least 8 road safety incidents in nearby parts of Maidstone Road, and particularly at the junction with Priestfields, and none on Cannon Close. In fact, I know of none since the school was opened 50 years ago. Furthermore, Maidstone Road, Borstal, is one of the top 20 roads in Kent, including the motorways, for speeding fines, with 849 issued in the last 3 years, with obvious implications for pedestrians. The council's proposal is to close the safe road for the purposes of the parents' drop-off. The closure will displace the journey to the less safe roads, and the most obvious one is Maidstone Road. Now, St William of Perth's got 200 pupils, but when you get to Maidstone Road, as local councillors, you'll know you've got Rochester Grammar School, that's got 1,100 pupils. You've got the mathematical school, 1,500 pupils. So you've got 2,600 teenagers using the pavement, getting at least a dozen buses home and all the rest of it. And you're trying to mix children, some are as young as 4 years old, with this, with these busy pavements. Public consultation. The data on page 29 of the Cabinet report shows that for all respondents, 72% in St William of Perth strongly disagreed with the council's school street proposals. That was individually the highest proportion of those who disagreed amongst the current 9 proposals for Medway. It's also consistent with the previous year when another survey was done which showed 71%, albeit that there's a tranche of people who will have moved through in that time. Unfortunately, the form of presentation from the respondents to the council could not be clearer. The message, I should say, from the respondents couldn't be clearer. They can expect a good response to their consultation and for it to be given significant weight. It's a clear no message. The new council promised in 23 that it would listen. Now is the time to hear and act accordingly. In fact, Councillor Maples quoted there, people feel frustrated in the community having the council doing stuff to them, and that's going to change. We'll have a different approach to our community. Good. Diversity impact assessment. 8 out of 68 primary schools in Medway are Catholic schools, so the chances are that the people who go to those schools for faith reasons are going to have to travel a lot further than the average. And yet, along with lots of other data, you look through these committee reports to date, and you won't find any data on the key objectives of this scheme. That's contrary to the DIA, the Diversity Impact Assessment. I'll finish on that main point. And Chairman, I also submitted a point about the process from here on, because I noticed that because the senior officers have said that this St William of Perth proposal is consistent with the local transport plan, then it can only go to Cabinet. Well, if you say to yourself that the main number concern from people who are addressing you tonight is safety of pupils, well, as soon as you say it's worse rather than better, the condition that backs up that judgment that it must go to Cabinet falls away. And I think there should be a reconsideration.
Thank you. Thank you very much for speaking.
Thanks.
Next, we will have David Stubbs. Okay, thank you, David, for agreeing to speak tonight. You will have 5 minutes once you're ready. The microphone looks like the microphone's on.
That's on.
Perfect.
Okay, hello, my name is David Stubbs and my son attends St William of Perth, or SWAP, in Rochester. I'm seriously concerned that the council's proposal to implement school streets at SWAP is putting small children in danger, and I urge the council to reject the scheme moving forward at my son's school. I'll spend the next 4 to 5 minutes outlining my concerns, which, unlike the council's proposal, are supported by data, facts and evidence. I'll start with the council's proposal. School streets might be appropriate for some schools, but that does not mean it's appropriate for every single school. And the problem the council is trying to solve for at SWAP by implementing school streets is not clear. The council cites generic nationwide accident data to support claims that the scheme will improve the safety for children at SWAP, but there's no data specific to SWAP to outline what the problem is or how safety will be improved. In an email to me dated the 15th of November 2024, Councillor Patterson stated, "I've witnessed the dangerous, selfish behaviour of motorists outside the school at drop-off and collection times firsthand. I've asked the council on 3 separate occasions to provide the number of times the councillor or anyone acting in an official capacity for the council has actually been present at SWAP during school drop-off or pick-up to observe such behaviour. I also submitted a separate FOI request asking for data, evidence to support separate claims made in the Rochester Community magazine earlier this year as to how school streets will improve safety for the small children. Unfortunately, no data has been provided whatsoever. Given safety is such a core focus of school streets, and that the council is openly making statements about dangerous driving and how safety will be improved, I would assume that the data specific to SWAP that I asked for would be readily available. After all, how can you propose a scheme that will have such a fundamental impact on the day-to-day life of staff, parents at the school without any data evidence to show what the problem is that school streets is solving? So no data from the council. I'm at SWAP a lot during the week, and I do accept some parents can park selfishly, but that's a completely separate issue from safety. And I can hand on heart sit here and say that I've not once witnessed dangerous driving in Cannon Close. So that begs the question, why does the council's anecdotal evidence hold any more weight than my anecdotal evidence? But coming back to the facts, as others have pointed out, there are data that shows how dangerous Maidstone Road and Priestfields are. 2 roads that small children with a relative lack of road safety awareness are going to be forced onto if school streets progresses. A recent article on Kent Live shows that Maidstone Road ranks 16th in the entire county of Kent for speeding offences. In the last 12 months, a total of 849 fines were issued to drivers for exceeding the speed limit on this road. There are also data, via a source provided by the council last year, that shows that in the last 5 years there have been multiple road traffic accidents on Maidstone Road and Priestfields. On Maidstone Road there was 1 fatal accident and 7 slight accidents. At the Priestfield junction, 3 slight and 2 serious accidents occurred. In Cannon Close, 0 accidents occurred. And the council is proposing that parents use a car park on Priestfields and then finish the journey to SWAP by foot, which is going to significantly increase the volume of children walking past that dangerous junction. And it's also worth highlighting that that car park actually has no safe pedestrianised entry or exit, but that's a separate matter. There are also data showing a clear relationship between impact speed and the chances of survival in an accident. The grim reality is that if a child gets hit at 30 to 40 miles per hour on Maidstone Road, which is probable per all of the accidents that have occurred and all of the speeding offences that have occurred on that road, they're very, very, very unlikely to survive. In contrast, if a child gets hit at 10 to 20 miles per hour in Cannon Close, they're much more likely to survive. So compared to Maidstone Road, Cannon Close is actually somewhat of a safe haven for these small kids. And then the final data points I want to highlight are from the 2 surveys the council conducted as part of their consultation, which shows that around 70% of people were against school streets. That's an overwhelming number of people saying no, and that includes parents, school staff, and even a third of the residents that live in Cannon Close. That last point is clearly not as important as the issue of child safety, and as a parent, I have a duty of care to my son, and this scheme will place him in more danger. That's not an opinion, that's a fact, supported by the data points that I just shared. So in summary, the council's got no data to support claims of dangerous driving at Cannon Close, but there are data to show that the roads the children are going to be forced onto are dangerous, where drivers commonly speed and there have been multiple accidents. So just let that sink in for a minute. You're going to force children as young as 4, 5 and 6 out of a safe cul-de-sac onto a road where people have been seriously injured and killed. There's been no accidents in Cannon Close in over 50 years, and you're going to move them onto roads where drivers commonly speed and people have been killed.
Thank you. Okay, next I would like to invite Mark Snoswell to speak. Thank you. You have 5 minutes from when you're ready. The microphone is already on. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Snoswell. I'm the Development Director of King's School Rochester, and part of my responsibilities is our work in the community. My involvement with the King's School goes back to 1977, when I started as a pupil. Since leaving in 1984, I've been a parent of the school, an active member of the alumni, a governor, and I'm now an employee. Parking and traffic congestion around King Edward Road has always been a concern. We've been using the playing fields and the surrounding buildings within the boundaries of King Edward Road and Lockington Grove since 1877. In recent years, the problems have been exacerbated, and this has led to frustrations to all, but I emphasise no accidents have been reported in the last 20 years. Therefore, King's has engaged with the local authorities in recent years, and we look to pursue a solution whereby our pupils are safe and our neighbours are respected within the existing infrastructure. However, we find the current plan circulated in September to be unacceptable. And we understand an extension, including the nearby Roebuck Road, has also been proposed in the last meeting in October. But we, like many in the community, have not formally been advised of these details. And indeed, when I checked the council website this morning, it still wasn't on there. This revised scheme will affect 3 schools with a combination of 1,000 pupils on a daily basis. It has to be recognised that the areas of King Edward Road, Roebuck Road and Watts Avenue are unique in Medway, having 2 successful independent schools that appeal to parents, not just in Medway, but across Kent. King's has 230 employees and spends over £9 million a year supporting 45 jobs in the UK supply chain. And in the last financial year, we contributed over £18 million to the UK GDP, which is worth approximately £8 million to Medway. We have pupils who use public transport and our own buses to travel to school. But for the younger pupils in our prep and pre-prep schools, there is a sensitivity about children using such services between 3 and 12. As a result, parents rely on using their cars to get their kids to school. We are therefore concerned that the proposed scheme has no transport solutions for parents. How will they ensure their children get to school safely? Our assumption is the current traffic flows will be forced to move into St Margaret Street, Crow Lane, and the very busy Maidstone Road and into Troy Town. This will lead to additional traffic around St Margaret's School, Troy Town, which is a significant concern for the head teacher, Miss Katie Willis, who's advised she is opposed to the scheme. It will result in parents using the limited parking spaces in this area and forcing them to cross Maidstone Road, which has significant traffic flows, and raised pavements, making it difficult for pupils and parents to navigate. This situation could result in pedestrians crossing closer to the road junctions, leading to increased congestion and danger. We fear this could result in accidents and fatalities, which contradicts the objectives of the school street scheme. And in that respect, I echo the comments of my previous 2 colleagues here who've just spoken on behalf of St William of Perth, who have the same problems with Maidstone Road. In October, we proposed to the consultants and Councillor Patterson an alternative solution. That 1, King's continues to operate, using its own staff, the current Lockington Grove drop-off zone at arrival and departure times. 2, that traffic using this scheme can only exit Lockington Grove by turning left into King Edward Road. 3, a school streets scheme is activated for traffic entering King Edward Road from Maidstone Road and St Margaret Street. And 4, traffic entering King Edward Road from Lockington Grove is permitted. This action will will prevent the need to have an additional pedestrian crossing point from the busy Maidstone Road. And we feel this is a compromise that will assist all shareholders to achieve the majority of the goals of the school street scheme. Unfortunately, our proposal has never had a reply or an acknowledgement. Regardless, we continue to fine-tune our operating procedures, and this term we've introduced a new pedestrian gate in King Edward Road to allow safe walking transit and bicycle transit into the school at arrival and departure time. We've stopped any vehicle movement into our King Edward Road gates between 0800 and 0900 and 1600 to 1630. We've moved our drop-off zone to our gates further up Lockington Grove, and we've encouraged the use of the new crossing patrol on Vines Lane. In conclusion, I want to reaffirm King's School Rochester is driven to ensure the safety of its pupils and the respect of its neighbours. But without a solution of where traffic can pass and children can safely cross the significant roads in Rochester, we will be opposed to the proposed scheme. This could cause injuries and fatalities.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. Next, our final public speaker will be Stuart Ball. Anytime, yeah.
Okay, my name's Stuart Bourne and I am a parent of 2 children that attend St Margaret's Infant and Junior School in Rainham. And I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of parents that I've spoken to in favour of this scheme. I have 2 children. My youngest, who's just turned 6, suffers from asthma. Over the last 2 years, she's been in hospital twice. The second time, she was in there for 3 days. For 3 nights, me and my wife held her hand whilst my daughter struggled to breathe and was on the ventilator. Car pollution is directly linked to asthma and asthma attacks. The data's there. We've seen the tragic circumstances of this happening to people in London. Luckily for now, she hasn't had an attack for a while. But every day I walk her to school, I pray that the pollution that I can see from the cars, the taste in my mouth, the people idling on the street isn't enough to set off another one of her attacks. And she's not alone. There are literally thousands of children in Medway who have asthma, who risk their lives on a daily basis going to school. And you're right to say that there isn't any data about pollution outside schools, and I think that's more of an indictment of the last 20 years of this issue being ignored by the council. I'm actually grateful that finally they're putting their money where their mouth is and protecting our children's health. But of course, it's not just about air pollution. It's also about road safety, and everybody's quite rightly talked about that today. Now, I walk my children to school every day, and I've lost count of how many times I've seen incidences where children's lives are put at risk. I've seen cars reverse into the school onto pavements, blindly trying to get out of the way because the road's blocked through traffic. I've seen cars mount pavements to avoid lorries and vans driving down a road they shouldn't be doing because it's a shortcut from Maidstone Road. And I've seen I've seen parents and myself push prams onto busy roads because cars are parked on pavements. Every day we see that. Every day I see that. And then 2 months ago, I witnessed a little girl almost get run over. She was riding down her scooter on a pavement. You hear a screech of wheels, a bang, a thump. Every parent, nightmare situation, looks over. Luckily, it was the scooter that was under the wheel and not her head. This is going to happen every day if we don't do something about it. We can ignore the stats, but parents know the truth. We've seen it. And every delay risks lives of children. And I really, really would appreciate if you just consider that for the moment. Now, in terms of St Margaret's, we talked about support, but the support is there. 64% of the parents voted in favour of the scheme. Only 48% of the local residents in the scheme are against the idea. We want it. The parents want it. The people want it. The only people who don't seem to want it are the local councillors. And it worries me that they're putting lives of children in danger. So I'm not speaking on behalf of any other schools, and I'm sure the other people I've spoken to have really done and know their schools and know their area better than mine. But I please ask and I urge you to stop wasting time and put the lives of my daughter and her colleagues at the forefront. Thank you. That's all I really wanted to say today.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the speakers who've spoken to tonight. So now we're going to move to the debate of members. So is there any members who wish to speak at this time? Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, and thank you, Ruth DeLu, for your report. And can I thank all the people that's been here this evening? Most of it's already been said, so I'm not going to go and try and repeat it. The second speaker that came to us this evening emphasised the issues with the people that can't actually physically access getting outside of their houses, either through disability or other issues. And their relatives, carers, can't access them, take them to the doctors, district nurses, whoever, are going to actually have real problems. But we had this problem not in just appearing now, we've had this problem in tranche 1. And it seems to me it's not beyond the wit of man, but obviously beyond the wit of this council, to understand that anybody that's got a blue badge could actually register against that vehicle coming in and be excluded from that problem. That's a really simple solution. That's a recommendation I'm making to you. I don't understand why you can't do it. Secondly, the thing that appalls me the most is why are people being fined going through these exclusion zones when there's no children at school? They may go through there during the period where it said it should be excluded, but the whole point of this scheme is to protect the children. If there are no children at school, why are people being fined? Why are they coming to me to say, I've appealed against this and it's been turned down? So I'd like an answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Can I just, on two substantive points there around blue badges and the registration of them and around fines in non-school days, could I just have a response from that from the officer side, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. If somebody's a resident in the school zone and they've got a blue badge, that isn't a problem. They can have an exemption. If there is a parent or a carer who has to take a child in who has a mobility issue, they can register for a blue badge. They will have an exemption. And certainly, if there is a situation where let's say, for example, and this was given by one of our speakers tonight, where the carer may have changed, so they may get a PCN. We can sort that out. That's not a problem at all. We have a process for that kind of thing, because all we want really is to keep children safe. Now, what I would say to you is, you brought up, Councillor Etheridge, around people being fined outside term time. There has been some instance of that because we are embedding new schemes and new systems. If that's been the case, I'd be more than happy if you would like to give me the details if people have had their appeals turned down on those decisions. Then I'd like to see them, to be honest with you, because that should not be the case. If someone's been fined outside of term time, then I need to understand why that would be, because these schemes do operate during term times, obviously, because the children are there. So more than happy if you'd like to send those to me, and we'll look into it for you.
I would have thought it'd been much easier just to turn them off outside of term time. And therefore, it would save the people all their grief. It would save council time as well, going through an appeal. I mean, it's just a total waste of time, but that's my thought on it.
Alex, did you want to come in on this point?
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Ruth. It's only just recently this was brought to our attention. And actually, we're writing to all the schools to understand when they're having training days, because I think this is the issue where there's been training days or inset days. And we're very happy to include them as part of the process to ensure we're not enforcing during those training days. So things have moved on literally over the last day or so. And we are going to make contact with all the schools.
Thank you. Sorry, was there any more? No. Councillor Williams.
Oops. Thank you, Chair. I think everybody around this table agrees that we should be doing everything to protect our children's safety on the way to school. Saying that, I have spoken to Cliffwoods Primary School, and since an initial contact earlier in the year, I've had no further contact from Medway Council. I don't think this is very good practice. I've spoken to officers and now they are in a dialogue with the school. This to me needs to begin an ongoing dialogue with all schools. I'd like to have more information on the impact of the first tranche 1 to help base a decision on. All this scheme might encourage more local children to walk to school. What provision will be made to parents who have to drive to school? Looking at the figures given to us, it seems to be confirmed that there is a big problem here. There is a chance of pushing any problems further out on the roads around the schools. Dialogue with residents and schools' parents is paramount if the schemes are to go forward. So we don't want to make things worse in the immediate areas around the school. It seems to be a lot of opposition to these schemes, and we need to get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. This scheme, I feel, is built on sand. There's no foundation for it at all. The congestion and the air quality are all functions of the number of car journeys. And whilst I am second to none in my support of keeping children safe, I spent 35 years as a teacher, and I understand the importance of that. And I also understand the importance of improvement of air quality. But as I say, this scheme is not built on facts at all. It's built on opinions, and it is no more than a vanity scheme. The number of car journeys will not be diminished by the school streets. Parents will be bringing their children to school. In many cases, they have to travel a couple of miles, and there's no safe bus route, especially for children of primary school age. I wouldn't want my primary school child to travel by bus on his own. And the air quality would not be improved because it's still got the same number of cars travelling the same amount of distance. So I think the whole premise is flawed. The congestion, you may well, the congestion outside the schools would be improved, obviously. But all that is going to happen is that the parents will be parking on surrounding streets, which already have residents parking on that streets. So the congestion is going to get worse. Tempers are going to get frayed, and that's going to lead to all sorts of problems. I understand what Mr. Bourne was saying about Orchard Street, but my inbox suggests a different scenario. There are 3 streets which adjoin into Orchard Street, that's Gatekeeper Chase, Hurst Place and Tudor Grove, and they have over 250 residents, and they are completely landlocked. They will not be able to get out of their houses in the times that the school streets will be operating. I'm the chair. I suppose I should have declared a small interest, but I don't think it's too relevant. I'm the chair of a small charity which transports elderly and vulnerable people to and from hospital. If they are not going to be allowed to pick up these people, they are going to be missing appointments because the appointments are not set by the residents, they're set by the hospitals. So if they have to get to Maidstone Hospital by 9 o'clock in the morning, which is often the case, our drivers will not be able to go into Orchard Street or those other roads, and that appointment would be missed, which would be a tragedy, really. I'm looking at evidence from Mayor's Court Road, which is on the previous tranche. Now, I walk my grandchildren to that school, and the parking there has been absolutely horrendous. They're not parking outside the school, but they're parking on the adjacent streets. They're parking actually on a roundabout. They're parking on the corner. We've had so-called enforcement officers there, traffic wardens by another name, and they do nothing. I spoke to one. I said, what are you going to do about all these cars parked on this roundabout? And he shrugged his shoulders and walked off. I've reported that on a number of occasions to officers. So in my mind, unless you can come up with some actual facts, I think the whole scheme is just, as I said before, a vanity project and built on sand and without any firm foundation based on actual evidence. And it's the evidence that I want to see. I'd like to see how many people, how many children have been injured outside the schools which are going to be subject to this scheme. I'd like to see what the base value of the air quality was before the scheme starts. and then perhaps monitor it after 12 months and see how it's improved. But until that happens, I'm going to be voting against this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cliff. Actually, can I just bring in colleagues from Project Centre London just to come in on some of the points around evidence and what the experiences of school streets in other locations, particularly on air quality and on collision reduction. Let's use that word, collision reduction. Just to bring the debate and actually to look at the wider context of what we would expect in this type of scheme applied to Medway over a medium to long-term period.
Hi everyone, Stephanie Weaver. Just to provide some context around some of the items that were raised. There was a 2021 study done around school streets which looked at the reduction of pollution, in particular reducing nitrogen oxide emissions, and that found that there was a 23% drop-off during those school periods. I note you raised an element of the nature of air quality monitoring. For Tranche 1, they were installed prior to the scheme starting. As you rightfully say, that monitoring is now ongoing. And then at a 12-month period, as Ruth said, is when we would look to be able to ratify that data. But just to confirm that they went in prior to the scheme being introduced.
Thank you. I see you want to come back in, Councillor.
I'd like to ask where these schools were where you conducted this evidence. Because I can understand this being if it's on a main road, but most of the schools that we're talking about here are not on main roads. And I'm wondering how relevant that particular evidence is.
So this was a national study, and happy to provide that for you, and it looked at school streets in a range of contexts, so we're happy to come back and provide that for you.
And does this evidence include schools which are not on main roads on the middle of these estates, residential estates?
Again, my understanding is yes, is the case. It was a national study. It's not something that we've conducted. So again, happy to provide that study for you.
I can't wait.
Excellent. Honestly, I think we need to look at evidence, long-term evidence experience from elsewhere. It's very important in these areas, and rather than throwing propositions around, I think it's useful to hear the evidence. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points, and thank you to our speakers tonight who spoke really eloquently. There's a lot to be learned from that. I just wanted to make a point about the Fairview scheme, number one. And it's not mentioned in the Cabinet papers, but 100 residents signed a petition against the Fairview scheme. These were mostly, as been indicated, elderly residents who don't use a computer, didn't want to do the online, and signed a petition that was actually presented at full council. I think just reiterating the point around evidence, it's interesting to hear that there has been some data collected, but we've not benchmarked any of our evidence. We've not the starting point. What is the starting point for air quality? And I think Mr. Bourne's point about air quality when he walks his daughter to school, I'm assuming he's walking through Rainham Town Centre, which is one of the busiest roads in Medway, and clearly there's a point. That can be dealt with in other ways, but that air quality issue won't go away because of the school street scheme, because of the heavy traffic that goes through Rainham in any case. I just wonder if the Chair was aware that in the South East, in 2023, 2,097 pedal cyclists were seriously injured on our roads. And on the basis of the evidence we're hearing from officers tonight, we're going to obviously have to take action for pedal cyclists to make sure that they are protected when they use our streets. In actual fact, accidents involving under 16s, the national trend for the last 10 years is down. Back in 2014, there were 1,884 young people injured. In 2023, that was reduced to 1,343, and that's without school street schemes. So I think, once again, what we're really wanting to see on this side is the evidence that justifies the introduction of the school street scheme. We've not heard that evidence. I'm really concerned that the cameras are being left on Why are the cameras on when they're not actually outside the hours? There's no need for those cameras to be on. Surely there are some GDPR issues there. You know, those cameras should be turned off the moment the restrictions end. And I do think for those tranche 1 schools, we need to look at the way they're actually operating on the scheme to see what we can learn before we go ahead with another load of schools. My final point, Chair, is the evidence says that it's older children that are more at risk from being injured in road traffic accidents. So I would like officers to spend their time designing schemes that reduce the incidence of accidents for 12-year-olds and above, rather than focusing on smattering our primary schools with traffic cameras so that they can raise more money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Can I just come to officers just on 2 points of that? One is the point in terms of consultation and what consultation would happen after this cabinet decision with the individual schools, and just to explain what will happen through the statutory consultation and some of the other sites that have slightly different approach to consultation following decisions. And secondly, just the point on camera enforcement again, and about enforcing, just to clarify that point around how we're learning lessons and making sure that we're not enforcing in periods that the restrictions aren't in place.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of consultation, the process has been that we came out informally to engage the public, to engage the schools, etc. And from that, it enabled us to put together schemes that could go forward from a statutory process perspective. So that's the statutory consultation. So as Ruth pointed out in the opening, the next stage is that we have further engagement through the statutory process. And in fact, on 3 of the schools where there have been modifications because of the dialogue, Chair, we have agreed to extend the statutory process for those 3 areas, not to have 3 weeks, but to have 6 weeks. So we will be having further engagement, and that's the next part of the consultation.
Did you want to go on consultation?
Yeah, on consultation, Chair. So I asked a question right at the top. How many, for tranche 1, the schools that went into the statutory consultation process, how many of those schools then did not go ahead with their school street scheme? Because there is some concern from residents that this is already a done deal. The statutory consultation process is just a bit of icing on the cake. You're actually just going to go through anyway. My gut feeling is I don't think any schools dropped out at the statutory consultation process. Thank you. For Medway, not for London or Northamptonshire or Glasgow.
Clarify, because I'm just wondering whether there was one in my ward that actually...
Sorry, just to clarify that point, yes is the answer. Some schools were taken away after the informal stage.
Sorry.
Sorry. And then following the statutory consultation, there was a decision not to take forward one school.
It was in my ward, obviously, wasn't it? It would have to be, yes. Yeah. It's Nicholas. Nicholas. Okay. There was the issue around camera enforcement during non-school days.
So we absolutely don't enforce on non-school days. As mentioned earlier, there has been an issue around schools that introduce incept days, training days for teachers. And we're happy to exclude that from the enforcement. However, we need to work with the schools, and we need the schools to tell us when they are, because it's not a simple process just turning them off. So we need to plan that ahead. And as I said, we are reaching out to the schools to try and get timetables so that we can program the schemes in order to do that.
So we've created a rather bureaucratic process. I mean, the council has quite difficulties communicating with schools on a whole host of issues, let alone them telling you when inset days. And my understanding is inset days are actually part of term time. It's just the children don't attend on inset days. They are part of term time because they're counted towards the number of days of training. So something's going wrong there, Alex, I think. But can you just confirm 100% those cameras are rolling 24 hours a day during term time? Or are they running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year?
Yeah, I need to come back and check on that. But certainly during, and I think the point, whether it's term time or however you use that phrase in terms of term time, is about having the cameras on when the kids are going to school. So what we're saying is around, as Alex was mentioning, was if there was an inset day and the teachers are going in but children aren't going into that school, that's the time when we're asking the schools to say, you know, the children aren't in at this point, therefore you don't need to do that enforcement.
Chair, there's a public interest in here about when we are recording residents' movements through those periods. If the scheme only operates 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 3:30 to 4:30, the cameras should only be rolling at those times. Why would they be rolling at any other time?
Just to clarify that question, I mean, there would be a number of cameras across the country for over 10, 20 years that would do that. So a bus lane that's only temporary would have a similar situation from what I understand. And I'm not sure that there's, and, you know, CCTV potentially, again, that would be not necessarily focused on traffic enforcement. But just to clarify, I wouldn't think that a
Point of
timed...
order, Chair.
Yeah.
Point of order. If Councillor Lawrence is asking a legal question, we need legal advice on this, and we take the question away, and he gets an answer of the committee.
Do you want to just do a quick briefing note on that? That would be fine. Yeah. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think it's an important point. I mean, as someone who recently got a penalty notice on the hatch on Raynham Road, that's operated 24 hours a day. Of course the cameras are going to be running there. But for these school street schemes, they're only operating for 2-3 hours a day. The cameras shouldn't be running any longer than that.
If we can get the legal briefing on that, because I'm sure that there is law on that anyway, because that situation this isn't a new situation in terms of the practice of that, I would believe. Okay, if we could move on to Councillor Brake, please.
Thank you very much. I found it quite interesting listening to Ruth Deleu's presentation. Equally, listening to the speakers this evening, which, all of whom made extremely interesting and valid points. But I think really what comes out of all of this is that it's almost like a one-scheme-fits-all approach is being applied to all of the schools, because what we heard this evening was all relative to the same areas of concern. And safety of our children has always been paramount. It's all the time I've been a councillor, and even as a member of the public and community. Safety of children has always been paramount. But it seems to me that somewhere, somehow, we, and here this is the royal we, seem to have lost our way when it comes to child safety. And to just give one or two examples, if we look outside of any school, primary schools in particular, that in the afternoon pick-up sessions, we find parents will be more than happy to start the wait from about 2 o'clock onwards.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Brake, it's not aimed at you. Can I just ask Councillor Lawrence, you're having a chat opposite We sat here and listened to the people you've called very respectively, and all we can hear is chatting either to the press or to a member there. Can we listen to Councillor Brake so I can concentrate on that rather than seeing you standing there? Sorry, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Brake, please continue with everyone's full attention.
Thank you. Sorry you completely threw me off there, but let me see if I can recover to what I was about to say. But I think I was really alluding to the points of the parents on the school runs, particularly primary schools, where they will quite happily start the wait for collection of children at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for schools that finish from 3 o'clock onwards. Not only do they then wait on double yellow lines, they cause mayhem, they park outside and across people's driveways, they create and cause all sorts of concerns to the local residents. In addition to that, the issue was raised about pollution. And it doesn't matter if you're in the summer months or the winter months. The car drivers, and they always seem to want to sit there with their car engines running. If it's in the summer, it's in order to put the air conditioning on, so they can sit there having their cigarettes in a reasonable temperature. If you're in the winter months, it's cold, so they have the heating going, the engine's running, and again, quite cosy to sit there and have your cigarettes. I've seen them each and every day, and this has been going on for year and year and year. I've seen them also parking across the zigzag lines outside of schools. I've actually sat with the police on occasions as a ward councillor to see exactly what happens. And interestingly enough, the moment a police car turns up, all of those people disappear. And it's very interesting that safety of children, when there's a police officer around, all of a sudden our parents seem to be very concerned about the safety of their own children. And this is not something new, it goes on all the time. But I was fortunate, I was able to procure the services of a police officer who was prepared to come with me and take me in a marked police vehicle to show me exactly what was going on and the impact of having a police officer in a police car. Safety, no problems at all. So I'm really wondering, in fact, whether this funding that Medway Council seems to have to deal with these issues of child safety, we could, in fact, share that with the police, and perhaps the police might be prepared to spend additional time at key times of school start and finish and help alleviate the problems of child safety. It's just a point. Equally, I think it would also impact upon the pollution. I think the other thing that we need to look at is school runs, and some work that I did when I first became a councillor and was involved with children's services was to look at the number of schools that we had in the towns, and here we were focusing on primary schools. And it was interesting to see the number of primary schools, the number of pupils, but then where did these people live? Where did the parents and the families live? And interestingly enough, at the time, Medway Council had offices in Strood, that's where the headquarters was. And we found it interesting from the information that was provided that showed that local schools no longer existed. It showed that there were officers that were living in Gillingham, and because of the fact that they were now employed by a unitary authority, which meant that they, from headquarters, there was nothing available in Gillingham, so they were now working in Strood. What they were doing, in fact, and I'm not homing in on council officers because I think this applies in many spheres, but it was particularly noticeable that there were families living in Gillingham that were actually working in Strood or Rochester and then taking their children into local schools. They moved their children from a Gillingham school to a Strood school or Rochester school because it was more convenient. Now, the impact on that is that children from Gillingham usually have their own group of youngsters that they play with, that they form friendships with. That was all coming apart simply because that was no longer there.
Councillor Brake, is this a point relevant to school streets?
Yes, it is very relevant. Very
if we can
relevant
get
because
there,
because the point I'm making is that we find that we're talking about making all of these vehicle-free zones between certain hours during the day, but the point I'm making is that children are moving around all the time. They're moving around all the time because parents are finding with the use of a vehicle, they can live in Gillingham, take their children to school in Strood. And all the time this is happening, this is increasing the number of vehicles, as Ruth has alluded to in her report. She was talking millions, but here, if we start to break it down, we find there's an awful lot of people that are moving across the community who perhaps needn't move across the community, and if they weren't, if we were doing a job properly, then perhaps we could reduce the number of vehicles. And if you reduce the number of vehicles, you improve on children's safety. That's really the point I'm making, and I think really we ought to start collecting all this data so it can be looked at, reviewed, and made available for people within the community. And let's all work together. This is a partnership between Medway Council, the schools, the parents, the local residents, and the police. Everybody, and there's probably more partners that need to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brake. Actually, this brings me to the point of, and talking about partnerships. I mean, what feedback have we got from existing schools? I think I know one of the existing schools made some statements in the agenda supplementary, noting issues, improved safety around their schools, less morning rush for children, more children walking to schools, better relationships with parents because there was less parking around neighbours, no parking on zigzags, for instance, and better air quality for children, and actually parents weren't complaining. So this was from the head teacher at Greenvale School, interestingly, although they were saying there's some issues with contractors and visitors. But what other, do we have any other pieces of evidence or feedback from existing areas and how it's been operating?
Can I just pick up on that, Chair? Just initially, I wanted to say that actually the streets that fall outside the school streets, we've received hardly anything back in terms of complaints or, you know, concerns that they've had displacement effect happen. And it has been quite refreshing that it's been really positive, especially from the schools that have the school streets and are now operating. So really pleased to say we've not received any negative feedback.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Campbell was... no, Councillor Campbell is Chris, but Chris was going to come in just before Councillor Campbell. Chris.
Sorry, just before that, I was going to say about the Greenvale Primary School. Actually, on that one, we did have some concerns beforehand in terms of that. A number of residents did speak to us about that around it, and so we did actually do another drop-in session just prior to the school street going live there, just to listen to some of them concerns and just understand what that was. And similar to what has been discussed today in terms of access points and getting into it. But then seeing the feedback that's come now, it's actually gone live and understanding that, I think a lot of them fears have kind of gone away in practice when it's actually there and they're doing it. So, yeah, as a designer looking at it, you can understand, there is a bit of change from what you've been doing for a long period of time, and therefore, of course, you're going to have concerns about how that operates. But I think from the green valve situation, we had the additional drop in to understand that, and the feedback so far is actually that haven't come to fruition.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm going to take Councillor Campbell's and then just have a 5-minute comfort break, I think, because we've got a few more contributions as well. So we'll take Councillor Campbell and then we'll have a quick comfort break.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few remarks to make about a few things, but I think first, if I could, a substantive point, I'd like Ruth to respond to some of the things that I heard from the speakers today. A little bit, I'd like reassurance that these are being addressed and taken on board. So Councillor Clark talked about the fact that Horsted Primary School found out about the plans from ONS papers and other publications rather than being told directly by the council and consulted. That's a pretty serious accusation. He also mentioned that it was falsely represented in some of the notices that went out that the school was in support, whereas the school had not provided support. He also said that the ward councillor and the school were excluded from certain meetings with the community. So I support school streets, but we can't be implementing them in that way. So I'd quite like some clarification on that. And finally, I'm sorry to the gentleman who spoke on behalf of King's School. I'm so sorry, I didn't note your name. But he said that the public meetings for the parents in the community around King's School, that they're not being advertised enough. So, for example, the council website doesn't hold details of that meeting. So I think this is all about people's right to be heard. And so it would be great. And then I can make my remarks after that, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I mean, I listened with interest to Councillor Clark's concerns there. Be more than happy to have a chat with you offline, Councillor, about that in more detail, if that's okay. I certainly want to look into that personally, because that isn't the intention. That really isn't the intention. The whole idea is that we do work in partnership, and I said that a couple of times in my statement, is that this isn't something that we want to say, we know best about this. Local knowledge is absolutely key, and that's why it's actually really good to hear from the people here tonight, because we're not at the end of this. We're at the start of a process, and it really is important that we listen and that we hear that local knowledge. Now, at the end of the day, what we come out with, it might not be absolutely the ideal for absolutely everybody involved, but we want to get to the place where we feel it's going to have the most benefit for the children and young people. And we're not there with these schemes at the moment, and I would reiterate that again. We're not there. There is another part of the process to take place, and that is to involve people. Now, if we need to get better at telling people we're having meetings, then we will get better at that, and I will take that on board, because there is absolutely no point us having meetings and not going out to people and getting the majority of people who have an interest to come along and say their piece. That's really important to us. So I will take that on board if that's something that we're not doing, and I apologise if that's the case. But most certainly, as we've said tonight, in terms of the process, we go out, we engage, we come up with our initial design. That initial design can change. It's an iterative process. That can change many times in this first stage that we're at. Because of the governance that exists in local government, the next thing we have to do is come back to the Cabinet and say, we've done this, these are the schemes that we think we'd like to put forward. Are you happy that we go forward? That was the decision that was made in November. That is the decision that's been called in that we are debating tonight. Depending on what the decision is tonight, the next stage will be we will come back out. We'll go back out there and we will have more meetings. And certainly we would love to engage the people who are here tonight and take on board the things that they have told us, because that's all really interesting stuff that we need to look at, and we need to work with the residents, the members, the school staff, you know, even talking to the children as well, which is, you know, something we haven't mentioned, but that's something to get their views as well. So I hope that, I think that answers your question. Does that, Councillor? Is there...
I think I'm more concerned if it answers addresses the points, but thank you so much. Yes, thanks. Okay, so I've been listening with interest to everything, and I think the first thing I want to say to Councillor Clark, because he made a remark about us being under pressure from the cabinet and from the officers, and really, Councillor Clark should know better because he's been in this position. And we're not whipped. This is an ONS. We are all making up our minds ourselves. We are capable of reading and understanding. So I can, for the record, clarify that there's been no pressure placed on us from the cabinet or from the officers. That's just not how ONS works. So just to put your mind at ease on that point. So the main thrust of the arguments here seems to be that there isn't data. I think that's a bit disingenuous because it's not really in any question that air quality significantly improved when vehicle traffic. It's not. I mean, you'd have to be living in some kind of deluded world of science denial to think that. Councillor Lawrence, you're welcome to live in that world, but the rest of us are realists and we know how this works. So it is really not in dispute that air quality is improved by reducing motorized traffic. So that's evident. Okay, so we don't probably have the granular level of data within streets in Medway, but it's ludicrous to question the premise that this is going to improve, you know, air quality. There's also a few false assumptions that have been made that I'm hearing. People saying things like, the vehicular traffic will not decrease because of this. Well, it most obviously will, because people will not be driving to make those school journeys because they are prohibited from doing that. I mean, that's just, I don't understand. I have a child, I drive my child to school, and then I don't drive my child to school. That means that's one journey I haven't made. I think, I don't understand. I can understand people going to work, dropping the children on the way. That's one journey, can't be avoided. But you will reduce the number of journeys people are making. Councillor Lawrence, you have a bit of a reputation of being a data head. I don't know if you know that. Good and bad, but yeah, data head. I don't know why the term dates thing is so complicated to you. It's very easy. The term dates and all are fixed a year in advance, published everywhere. It's a pretty straightforward thing to kind of cross-reference available dates against the data from the ANPR cameras to then say, actually, these PCNs should not be issued. So I don't really think that's a problem. I'm sure once it's more established, the processes are, you know, stronger, these kind of errors will be weeded out. And I'm quite reassured by Ruth's assurance that residents can appeal. Even now, if they're getting PCNs where they should not, they can appeal. So I don't feel people are being unfairly penalized here. Road safety. So I actually found it very interesting to read the ROSPA report that Councillor Lawrence was quoting. So I looked up on the website. They're actually broadly in support of school streets. They seem to say that it's very successful. I read some of the case studies on their website. Interestingly, one of the case studies that caught my eye was a Catholic school, primary school in Ealing, which seemed to share some similarities with St. William of Perth and some of the arguments I've heard against that scheme in St. William of Perth. It's on a small road, off the main road, primary school. And evaluation of the scheme actually has shown that the majority of the school staff say that things have improved dramatically. They feel the air quality is improved, safety is improved, it's less chaotic, less madness, school traffic. And they've also measured this after implementation for a little while, which is exactly what we are planning to do, so no different. They measured this over a period of time, and what they found is that a majority of the people safely use pavements and they either walk or they cycle on the road safely to school. A very, very small minority are the people who are using the roads unsafely to get to school. And again, ANPR cameras, somebody said cameras don't stop people. I can't remember who said that, might have been, I don't know, that ANPR cameras don't stop people doing things, but they do. They are a deterrent. People are not going to knowingly go in and seek PCNs. I mean, that's, again, a ludicrous assertion to make. And in fact, what this case study clearly demonstrates that it actually did deter people from driving in, and they have that. More data. I looked up schemes. There's about 15 to 20 just in Kent or Sussex of school streets successfully established and running. There have been national studies, as Stephanie has alluded to. Councillor Kemp, you were a bit dismissive when Stephanie offered to produce that data and show you. You know, you asked for the data, she's ready to give it to you. I don't know why you're so dismissive about it. In terms of, I've also found, I think Scotland was the first country in the UK to bring in school streets, and they have compiled, I read a report online, at least 16 different studies on school streets, and all overwhelmingly positive. The response, yes, there are a few niggles, few things that need tweaking, but overwhelmingly positive. I think it says something like a total of 16 studies. An increase in school street closures would also not result in traffic displacement causing road safety issues. They've conclusively found that it does not create the kind of problems that people are worried about. Now, I get it. I'm a mum. I've got a primary school age child. I've actually got a son who goes to the maths school on Maidstone Road, so I know how bad the traffic there gets. I do understand road safety, and I've driven my son to Dell's school, which was also mentioned in this, and the parked cars and the pavement, all of that chaos, people driving through, people coming up against each other right in front of the school gates because they aren't willing to park a little bit farther and walk, and then people beeping, swearing. I've had my children sworn at whilst I walk past cars because they're insistent they have to drive right to the school gates to drop their children. And I've had to actually take my children away. I don't want them to hear all this swearing. It's you know, so I understand how road safety is important, and I take that very, very seriously. And I don't want to minimize the concerns of some of the people who have spoken here from personal experience. I do take that on board. I do hear you. For example, I drive past Priestfields all the time. I genuinely am struggling to see what the problem is with parking up in Priestfields and walking on the same side of the road to Cannon Close. I'm sorry if I've completely got something wrong here, but I'm not seeing what the issue there is. Apologize if I've missed something. In terms of, and yeah, I mean, the whole point is that school streets ANPR camera enforcement will deter people driving in, and it'll encourage take-up of active travel options. This is what the evidence is supporting elsewhere, everywhere else. I mean, there's a whole bunch of evidence coming in from London where there's so many school street schemes. Now, I understand nobody likes change. It's difficult. It's difficult if you're very, very used to certain patterns and certain routines. I know if I have to drop my son off to school 15 minutes earlier than normal, it throws me into an absolute tailspin. I just cannot cope with that in the morning. So I understand. It takes me weeks to get used to even simple changes in school, like PE uniform, which day is it? I still get it wrong. So I do understand that it's difficult. It's difficult to change these routines and patterns, but I do feel we need to take some very proactive, drastic measures to improve the air quality, and that particularly, listening to Mr. Bourne, they're talking about, and also Councillor Lawrence, I don't know if you saw, but he was shaking his head in the negative that he wasn't walking past Rainham High Street like you were trying to suggest. So, no, I mean, I found that very moving and very compelling, and I think I'm of a similar mind. So I think it's good to talk about data, but you can't be selective about data then, okay? So we need to be open-minded, we need to accept the data, and we need to kind of not make assumptions which are false. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I know we've been in session for about 100 minutes so far, and I've got at least 4 other speakers to come in and perhaps make some remarks myself. I suggest perhaps we take a 5-minute comfort break at this stage and then resume this discussion. Thank you. the family business school teaching, which I've tried to avoid so far. Okay. We're just going to resume the debate, and the next member to call is Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Ruth, I was just going to start. Don't look too worried, because it's a shame, really, because it's just to make sure that members opposite hear you say it again. We are still going out to statutory consultation. And I think that's the main thing, because, you know, I think the opposition have failed to grasp that. And I've got to follow Councillor Campbell with saying that the speakers tonight have been amazing, right? The stories that you've come and told about the personal problem you have with your own schemes, I'm sure has been listened to tonight, and it will be listened to again. You've got to feed into that consultation. And that's the proper way of doing it. And that is the proper way, Councillor Lawrence, of doing consultations. No setup. We listen. You know, you set schemes and you listen to people. There seems to be a bit of a NIMBY attitude coming from the opposition around not in my backyard. This is a whole scheme for the whole of Medway that we're looking at, different places, different issues. And Councillor Kemp, you know what I'm going to say when you tell us that, and maybe it's good for the people in the audience to hear that when you say that this is a scheme built on sand and a vanity project, Councillor Filmer brought this scheme up. Councillor Filmer, your own colleague, was inventing this scheme. And so I find it, you know, quite surprising you're actually calling one of your own colleagues. You're saying that one of your own colleagues done a big issue here, bringing this vanity project up and a project built on sand that was developed over your side. So I think for a start, you need to be a bit careful before you throw the comments. You can come in with a point of order.
Point of order, Chair, please.
Yes, Councillor Kemp.
As your colleague said earlier, we're not whipped on this side. So in this committee, we can make our own mind up. Thank you.
Perfectly right, Councillor Kemp. I'm just saying, though, when you looked at us and told us it was a vanity project and built on sand, it's not for an argument, Councillor Kemp, unless you've got a point of order. I just wanted to put the clarity across that it was devised initially over your side. That's all I want to say on that, Chair, for a moment. I think when we look at, you know, the school safety street scheme is fundamentally about reducing risk to children and the air quality. And we can sit here all evening. We've heard from some of the witnesses that, you know, I don't know what evidence, Councillor Lawrence, you're after, immediate evidence you're after about reducing air quality. We have an issue with air quality in Medway. It's got better and better. We've seen that. We've got a task group looking at that, and it is getting better. But actually, what are we waiting for? You know, areas like Lewisham and areas in London, they've acted swiftly because there has been too many, asthma getting worse, pneumonia, elderly people getting the health issues of people have been getting worse day by day. And actually, by acting now, can actually save people in the future. I don't know if we're waiting for maybe a young person to have an accident. I think it's great when we hear from the witnesses that some of the schools have never seen an accident in 40 years. Great. But there could, you know, one is too many. One accident is too many. And I'm not prepared to sit this side and think, well, you know, OK, we've not had no accidents in years, and let's not do anything, because why do we need to? Because until one happens, then maybe let's have a look at it then. I'm not prepared to do that for the generations after us. It's just not fair. And I think, you know, we do extensive consultations. There's extensive consultations done with parents, with schools, with the local residents. You know, we are looking to reduce congestion. And we all talk about congestion all the time. You know, councillors arrive at meetings here late. You know, we always talk about we got stuck in the traffic, we got stuck in things because congestion's bad. And by reducing congestion around our schools is not a bad thing either. And I'm not going to sit here and apologise for it. And, you know, our witnesses in the audience, you know, of course you've got children. You're worried about your children, and so you should be. And if there's Maidstone Road that's difficult, if there's elements of safety that needs to be looked at, that does need to be looked at. And none of us can sit here and say it doesn't. But that doesn't stop these schemes that the Cabinet agreed going forward for statutory consultation. It doesn't stop it. And, you know, I'm going to say again, and Councillor Lawrence, you should know better really, to say that it's a done deal. It's not. Because schemes are adapted, schemes are adjusted, schemes are looked at, because I think there's even been some comments tonight that will make us look at the term times and making sure schools tell us when they are, the term times. And, you know, you talk about the CCTV, there's roads in Medway that would love a CCTV camera up 24/7. They would actually love it. I'm not talking about Big Brother, but you only have to go to your local Hempstead Valley to know that you're watched as soon as you get out of your car, you're watched everywhere you go, including the phone in your pocket, actually, with your smartphone. That traces you. Well, you know, you are a data freak, I'm going to say that, but you are a digital freak as well, and you do know that we are tracked and we are traced wherever we go nowadays. I'm not saying it's right. We do need to know whether them cameras go on or off. But for some residents, if their car was broken into, etc., they might actually come back to the council and say, was that on? Did it pick up anything? Because it would be really helpful if it did. Look, I've said already I understand the concerns of the local residents and the businesses and, like, you know, the element from the King stuff, but there are permit arrangements in place. There are alternative arrangements to minimise inconvenience with carers, with Councillor Kemp, you've heard tonight, with our voluntary sector drivers, people that are taking people to hospital and stuff. There are measures in place. And maybe we have a job to do, and Ruth, and maybe it's a job that we have to do to make sure people are clear about how certain members of their family or certain agencies can get those permits better. And we have a job to do to make sure that happens, right? Maybe we do need to do that. But I'm going to say again, like Councillor Campbell said, similar schemes in areas like Camden, Waltham Forest, have shown measurable improvements. It doesn't...
Sorry, Councillor Lawrence.
I'm just picking up areas that have shown measurable improvements. I could pick up tons of areas that have shown measurable improvements, even in Kent. Medway and our schools are not totally different to everywhere else in the country. They have children going to them. We're trying to stop congestion. The actual purpose of what we're trying to do is the same. Whether you're saying not equivalent or not, the purpose is the same, right? And, you know, I understand, again, about, you know, change can be challenging, but I cannot reconcile the decision to oppose an initiative that clearly prioritises the safety of our children. I don't get it. You know, and I get the democracy and I get the call-in from you guys. I get it. You know, but, you know, just recently you had 2 member items on how we're impacting on people and could damage people, and you're actually now opposing us for trying to keep people safe. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense that you're opposing a scheme that prioritises keeping our young residents safe, or keeping the health of our residents, you know, lowering the health of the risk of health to our residents even more, especially the ones with the COPD, asthma, etc. I don't get it. And I think actually Chair, I'm going to finish by saying compelling speeches and really good, you know, speeches from our speakers. It's not easy getting up here talking to a bunch of councillors. But you guys let them down, because their evidence is much better than what you're giving here about your NIMBY stuff, about not in my backyard, not on Rainham Street, and, you know, Councillor Brain, not every resident, not every Gillingham, for example, parent sits in a car smoking, okay? They don't. But you did say that. And you know, it's a bit of a saying that everyone, you know, every parent that drops their kid off to school will be sitting in the car smoking. I've seen many councillors sitting in the car with air conditioning on during the summer. So we all need to stop the idling of our vehicles. We all need to be careful on that, all of us, right? But I hope, Ruth, that you pick up that evidence that was given tonight, because they deserve to be listened to, you know. But I cannot support the call-in. I cannot support the call-in from the opposition purely just to try and score a point against us. It is ridiculous. And I'm not going to move away from what the whole criteria of this scheme is. You are an award-winning scheme. You've just recently won an award. Let's not forget that. And it isn't just a little tick box award. It was an award about safety and about the initiative. And I think we've got to battle on and we've got to do that. But listen also to the concerns of our residents. without fail, that must happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I've got three councillors who haven't spoken yet, so I'm going to take them next that have indicated. So that's Councillor Brown, Councillor Doe, then Councillor Jackson. I've seen Councillor Williams and Councillor Lawrence wanted to come in. Oh no, Councillor Williams has referred that. And then I'll give Councillor Lawrence an opportunity to sum things up after we've taken the three councillors who haven't spoken yet. Are there any other councillors who haven't spoken yet that would like to speak? Okay, excellent. We'll go to Councillor Brown then.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to all the people who made submissions and spoke. I'm really pleased that the schools are so engaged in this, because having looked at some of the submissions, especially the written submission from the St. William of Perth School, obviously this is going to give them a great opportunity to look at the congestion that appears to be in their area already, because things like the delivery of food and the arrival of specialists and contractors appears to be during the start of the school day. Well, having managed some of these services for other local authorities, I've never had school deliveries happening when the children are coming and going to school. But I think that maybe the school is going to find that this is a great opportunity to relook at some of the things that are happening there. So that's a great thing. The other thing that I think is good about all this is, and leading on from what Councillor Brake said, that we've always had problems around the schools, and just because we've always had problems with illegal parking and bad behaviour from drivers doesn't mean we shouldn't do something about it. I mean, if we were not to do anything about it, we might still have the Great London smogs because we didn't do anything about air quality. We might have had no smoking, and many of us would have had far worse chest problems when trying to eat in restaurants and even in some enclosed spaces. The tube is much safer in London because of legislation, and this all started with people thinking about the health of people, the safety of people. And I think just concentrating on the school streets for one moment, this would appear, from what Councillor Brake said, be something, any kind of action that's long overdue. Because thankfully, Councillor Brake did tell us that when police were around, behaviour improved. Well, pity we didn't have all the police we originally had. But we seem to have lost our way, is also a statement that Councillor Brake made, and I thank you for it, Councillor. We may not have lost our way. We took this administration in May, and we're actually trying to make headway to improve the lives of people in Medway. And we're starting on several tracks of improvement. Some of these the opposition does not like. Some of these actually the opposition did start, but they don't like the fact that they're actually coming to fruition after their failure to do anything. So I would say we can't possibly let the children of Medway down by not continuing with the school streets. But I will go back to what Councillor MacDonald said and ask Ruth yet again to confirm that we are going to have consultations, but not just consultations, but that there's the possibility, if changes need to be made before we get to the formal consultation stages, that the partnership working, that people around here, and I will include the opposition here, because they have said that they want to work with us on this. They've wanted to work with officers, and their stated aim earlier tonight was around the safety of children. So I think that it is incumbent upon our colleagues across the divide that they reconsider their opinions on this and that they support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Doe.
Can Ruth just do what I asked, if you don't mind?
Yep. So the specific ask was, Councillor Brown?
That to confirm that there is a consultation and that before that happens, there will be engagement with the stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. Come in, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Yep, I will reiterate. I'll just go through the process again. So the point we're at the moment is that we have been out and engaged with a basic scheme and an idea. And obviously the people who've come along today, that's why they are interested at this stage for various reasons and want to have their input. Because of the governance in local authorities, we have been to Cabinet and suggested these schemes for these particular locations, and they were agreed for the next stage. Now, the next stage with all these types of schemes is that we will go back out to the stakeholders, the interested parties, which will be the residents, the schools, the parents, and the councillors as well, to say, okay, we're going to go forward with this school. Let's have a look at the location. Let's take on board, and I will most definitely can confirm to you, we will take on board the comments that we've had and the written submissions, and look at what's being put forward, and to see if we can mitigate that in any way. Because, as I said, local knowledge is absolutely key, you know. People walk their children to school, hopefully, or drive their children to school, and they know what these issues are. So we want to listen to those issues and see, are there ways we can mitigate at all, so that we can get as many children as possible walking to school. It's all about modal shift. This is what this is about, which is a term we use in transport. It's about getting as many children as possible walking to school as opposed to being driven to school. Now, that won't be 100%, we know that, and this is a change. As Councillor Campbell said, change is not always easy for people, and we're not saying this is going to solve all of the problems around every school from day one, but gradually behaviours will change, and we're seeing this in our other schools. So, just coming back to that point, if I may, we will, once we are given the go-ahead, if we are given the go-ahead by Cabinet to carry on with the schemes, then we will go back out, the project will continue, we will start talking again to the stakeholders, we'll be looking at the issues. If we then get to that point, we will then go out to statutory consultation, not easy to say, statutory consultation, and that is the point where, once again, it's open to everybody to come back and say, we feel there's an issue with this scheme because, and then we will take note of that as well. And part of the statutory consultation is that we have to look at what people are saying, and if it comes back and someone says, this isn't going to work because of this, X, Y, and Z, we will look at that and we have to respond. That's part of statutory consultation. We have to respond. If someone comes back and says, I just don't want it, that's not statutory consultation. You know, there's nothing we can do. Someone says, I just don't want it. If people come back and say, I don't want it because it's going to cause this and I think you need to do this, or please consider this, we will do that as statutory consultation. The one other thing I would say is all traffic schemes have to have statutory consultation, and it costs money as well to do that part of the scheme. The one thing we don't want to do is get to the point of statutory consultation process before we're really quite confident that we've spoken to all the stakeholders and we've taken account of, we would hope, 100% of people's views, and we've tried to work and mitigate any problems that have been raised. So yes, I think that's explained it.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, I'm going to call Councillor Doe now.
Right, thank you, Chairman. First thing is that I think we need to look at why we wanted this referred to the Owen Scrutiny Committee. And if I could just remind you, the reason was not that we wanted to stop this thing, as far as I'm concerned, it's serious concerns about the decision and public support for the proposals. Now, I think that all of us here around this table are obviously very concerned about child safety and how it can be improved. And I think that school streets are really part of a suite of measures that need to be taken. But one of the things which does concern me, actually, is the question of enforcement. because I think that there are a number of very dangerous things. I mean, for ages I've been on about this, as you may know, about anti-idling. I think that you know, we have to get really to grips with this as a council, and I think police have to get to grips with it too. We need to make it very clear, because really that is very, very damaging in health terms. I think the second thing is how we approach the various schools was, I think, made us feel concerned. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want to approach the school on the basis we've decided you're going to have this particular scheme, and how would you like it? You know, we can tweak it, we can adjust it, but you're having it anyway. And I think what we should be doing, and I hope we will do, is to actually approach the school and say, we think this site may be suitable for this scheme. We would like to work with you to make sure that we listen to all the problems that can be solved, suggest solutions to them, and then come to a joint view. And I think that's a reasonable way to go forward. But simply, if we got the idea that we, for example, don't think there's problems which they say do exist, again, we have the means of dealing with that. I mean, I think, for example, I know from Cannon Close, we're talking about, you know, the risk of parking in the main road. Beyond that, I mean, that is quite a serious issue, actually. And I think that there are a number of schools where, you know, you will get this parking in some very undesirable places. And obviously that needs to be looked at. I think also, one of the things which I think is very important is that we don't condemn people particularly to saying your children have got to cycle to school or they've got to walk to school. This is a question of parental choice. And I think that what we can do is to say, look, you know, the things that you do have an impact upon the region. But, you know, what I don't like is simply saying, you'll take this, and that's it. And I think that's what we got from the statutory consultation. I'm reassured, I think, Ruth, that what you said there, I think if you approach it in the manner that we're having this discussion, we will look at the facts, then it seems to me that's a very balanced and reasonable way of doing it. I think that for example, cycling can solve of itself, if we say we want to encourage it, but in some cases it's extremely dangerous. And I think that we have to take account of that as part of our study procedures. I think we have to involve the parents of the school and of course the staff of the school, and make sure that before we put this in, we win them round. We don't just shove it out, we win them round to it. Because if not, it's never going to work properly, I think. You'll just end up with a sort of kind of war between the council and the parents, but I'm sure we all want to avoid. So I think that if we can manage to do that, don't just dash into this, but actually do take the time for mature discussion, then I think we can come to conclusions that make sense for the parents and so on, and get them with us. But equally, I think we need to also look at the enforcement that we've got in relation to these school sites, where people are parking where the hell they like, often, and I've seen it many times. I agree, not all got a fag in their mouth, but you know, people just don't think. It's not viciousness, it's just lack of thought. And I think we've got to start making them think, and also we've got to crack down on idling, people just leaving their engines running. It's absolutely disgraceful, that is. It's completely and utterly wrong. And I think we need to stop it. So I think that if we work with the school and parents the way I've suggested, we ought actively to be working to a situation where the parents are saying, when are we going to get this scheme? You know, when are we going to get it in? And the last thing I'd say is, if you do introduce these schemes, then I think it's very important that we have a monitor and review, so that after a year of the new scheme being brought in, we do have the results and we actually sort of get, you know, we go back to our contacts and say, what did you think of this? Is it working for you? And if it isn't, we've got to be able to either adjust it or scrap it. And I think it's how you approach people, I think. That's the main thing. And I'm not against this. I'm really saying that I just think that we need to make those safeguards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Doe, and thank you. Briefly mentioned cycling, trailing, our discussion in February about the local cycling, walking implementation plan. You're looking ahead at your work programme there, so that's useful. There is a good point around monitoring there. Sorry to ask a techie question. Are these permanent traffic orders or temporary traffic orders that are implemented under?
They're under permanent.
They're under permanent, but there will be standards, there will be monitoring and evaluation, and amendments can be made to the permanent traffic orders. So the permanent traffic orders is a legal piece of paper that says you can or can't drive through an area, and that's the basis on which enforcement can happen. Yeah, excellent. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to pick up on something that Ruth said earlier about involving the children. I'm aware that my ward aren't involved in this yet, but I go into 2 of my primary schools once a term to sit with their school council. I have no influence, they just sit there and tell me. And both primary schools, both times, have had air quality and dangerous driving around the school in their top 5 of the things that they were concerned about. So I think we should be asking the children there. And one girl did tell me that she had nearly been knocked over twice by cars mounting the pavement. But I also understand the concerns that everybody has said today, and I think nobody around this large table are under any illusions that this is a work in progress, but it's an award-winning work in progress, and we all need to work together, listen to the concerns of everybody, because I think on that point, Councillor Doe's right, we have to get everybody working together, and schools, parents, children's counsellors, officers. It's the only way this scheme is going to go forward, but it needs to go forward.
Thank you very much. Very important point there about actually not just us as adults who are far away, but really children, and you know, as corporate parents, and as you know, a Medway that's really put a lot of effort into child-friendly Medway and all those fantastic initiatives. Actually, it's very important that we also just consider their voices as well in this discussion. I'm going to come to Councillor Lawrence to kind of wrap up this calling and kind of making a closing argument. It feels like a courtroom, but hopefully we shall get you off, particularly those who may be getting the 9:30 train. Councillor Lawrence.
I could make this last till 10 o'clock on that basis.
So some of our people literally have the 10:30 train as their last opportunity.
Chair, just first of all, you know, I think the way you've chaired this has been brilliant. So, you know, thank you for that. I think we've had a good debate around the table. I'm just a bit disappointed that colleagues opposite have decided to make this slightly personal by accusing us of NIMBYism. I mean, Dan, effectively, you've besmirched all of the people who've spoken today.
Point of order, Chair, please.
I thought there might be. Come on,
of NIMBYism.
Thank you. I was making the point that you bring a member's item about the whole item, the whole scheme itself. And all we heard some great stories from your witnesses that were called, and every one of you, well, apart from the last speakers, was bringing in their own little bits. We're talking about the whole scheme here and trying to get reassurance about the whole scheme, Councillor Lawrence.
So you'll withdraw the comment on NIMBYism then, please?
No, I won't. No.
Right, so you have besmirched everyone who's spoken here today with a charge of NIMBYism. And the problem is what you're doing is you're not listening to residents. Now, I've been accused of being a data head. You know, I'm an insurance broker. I work with data all the time. And unfortunately, good policies made based on good data. Poor policies made on feelings. You know, Councillor MacDonald, on your basis, if we really want to look after all the children who are out there in Medway, then we need to smother the whole of Medway with a school street scheme, because children
So was that a point of order, Councillor Campbell?
I don't know if this classes as point of order, but didn't you talk about gut feeling earlier when you were talking about like the traffic on one of the streets? Just, you know, sorry. You specifically said gut feeling, I know, because I was quite amused.
Right. Thank you for that, Councillor Campbell. Okay, but actually the evidence says that children aged 12 to 15 are at most at risk from a road traffic incident. Okay, therefore, if we want to do our best with the limited amount of money we've got. And remember, this is not Medway's money. We wouldn't be doing this if the government hadn't given us £900,000 to do it. Actually, we need to be looking at the areas around our secondary schools. Then what we need to be doing is looking at where young people go at the weekends and in the evenings.
Point of order, this has nothing to do with schools, streets. If we go to clearing up every piece of mess that has already been alluded to, we can be here for a week, not till 10 o'clock. And Councillor Lawrence, you need to stick to the subject. You might be a data guy, but actually the rules around this are to stick to the subject you're speaking about.
Right, I am actually. I'm responding to the points made on your side, Councillor Brown. Maybe you were asleep when they were being made, I don't know.
Okay,
Excuse me, Councillor Lawrence, withdraw that. I am not the person who sleeps in meetings. Withdraw that.
You clearly missed that point, Councillor Brown, because your colleagues made those points. I'll withdraw the comment, Councillor.
Thank you.
Withdraw the comment. So on the basis that Councillor MacDonald is speaking, we need to implement something across the whole of Medway, because young people use the whole of Medway, and the accidents, the evidence says that children aged 12 to 15 are most at risk from Maritime, not primary school children around primary schools during the 2 hours in which the school street scheme operates. On air quality may dip for a very short period whilst cars are excluded from a couple of streets. But the problem with Medway is things like the prevailing winds. Pollution is brought in. We've got the M2, we've got major trunk roads that go through Medway. The quality of the air is not determined by a few streets outside schools. If we really want to deal with air quality, a bit like Councillor MacDonald's point, making sure all of our children are safe, then we need a clean air zone going through Medway. We need to get rid of all the most polluting cars and vehicles driving through Medway. So maybe you want to make that some policy. Now, I am very much wanting the Cabinet to reconsider these items for officers to show the data that they've used to determine which schools have been selected in this tranche 2. Be interesting to know if there's intended to be a tranche 3 or we're going to run out of money by then. And then if the officers present the data that backs up that the school street schemes proposed will have an impact on road traffic incidents during school time, during the operation of the school street, I'll be very happy to support that. In actual fact, I said right at the top, we'd be happy to support it if the data was there and it showed that we were making good policy based on data. And I think that's incumbent on all of us in the way we spend public money to make sure we get the biggest bang for our buck. Now, the other thing, I'm pretty certain I know exactly how this is going tonight, but once we go to the consultation period, I do think officers need to invite local members to be part of that consultation. And I'd also, because I didn't hear it happening on tranche 1. I know, no. I'm just making the point that local members...
Is this a point of order?
No.
Otherwise, can we let Councillor Lawrence proceed?
Thank you. So if officers would undertake to include local members and residents, and there is an important point here. If we hadn't have done this calling, you wouldn't have heard those stories because they're not in the Cabinet papers. They're not, it didn't come to, I made the point to Councillor Field when we were discussing this, that actually, wasn't it a shame that the consultation didn't come to ONS first before we had a call-in? So I think this, if for no other reason, I know you probably think we've wasted 3 hours of important time, but we've actually heard the stories of the people most affected by this potential scheme. So I think I've said everything I want to say, Chair. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a chair of a 9-school primary trust. Child safeguarding, child safety is my 3rd job. And I think it's really important that the council uses its money where it most can in order to keep as many of our children safe. I'm not sure that this one has the biggest bang for the buck. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. So is that a point, Councillor MacDonald? Yeah, quickly.
I just wanted to say to Councillor Lawrence, no one's wasted any time. That's what committees are about here, right? But I just wanted to make it very clear about saying that I've urged everybody on your side, right? Most of your members on that side know that I don't work like that. I just bring up fact. And like tonight, though, you have said, and I'm going to say about Councillor Doe, Chair, what Councillor Doe said about enforcement, I wholeheartedly agree. I agree with it, and he knows I agree with it, right? So, you know, what I'm trying to say to you is, though, is that you can't have it both ways, Councillor Lawrence. You know this. Hang on a minute, Councillor Lawrence, before you come in. It's not a criticism, but in this meeting tonight, you've said that this consultation is probably going through the back door, and it's agreed already. It's a done deal, you said. So that's not very good to officers. Forget about us. Forget about us, what we do here in the theatre, right? When you're criticising officers putting something through a back door, that's not a good thing either. Now, we all know we all work better than this. You've worked better than this with me as well, right? But what I'm trying to say is you can't just stop a scheme about one element or this element. You've got to actually look at the whole scheme as an approach. Like it was started over your side. That's not having a go at you. It was started by a member your side, the idea. So let's just, you know, Chair, I want to propose that we go with 1.1.1 recommendation. If anyone can second me, that's to accept the Cabinet decision and therefore take no further action. And I'm sorry, because you can obviously have your say as well in a minute, but I want to propose that now, please.
Okay. Yes, that I'd imagine be a proposal, but however, I just want to confirm what the opposition's, the group that have put the call-ins proposition, because obviously there are two propositions. So if you look at page 7 of that you essentially, I'm assuming that as Councillor MacDonald has referred to 1.1.1, I imagine that's probably not your proposition. So
a proposition, but let me just find it. Page 7.
So, yeah, so that's recommendations. So this is the fun bit for all the audience where we get to go.
No. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, go through that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, my preferred route would be 1.12, asking Cabinet to request the data that backs up the selection of these sites for that scheme. If the data shows it, then by all means let's move ahead to the consultation. And then we can, as members, where we're affected, working with residents and the schools, we can then take part in the statutory consultation.
Okay.
Just a very quick question. So that's my proposal.
That's your proposal, quickly.
Yeah, where does the consultation come back to before it gets enacted? Does it go to full council? Or
it goes back to Cabinet, and then if Cabinet make a decision, it's made unless somebody calls it in again and it comes in. And
to be clear, Chair, can we, on behalf of the group over here, we want to propose recommendation 1.12 for officers to go back to Cabinet with the data that justifies the selection of the schools that they've made in tranche 2.
Okay, now technically only you have made that proposal, so I would need a seconder. Okay, seconded by Councillor Kemp. Shall we take a vote on that now? Because essentially that is the most meaningful. And then the base proposition. Sorry, Councillor Doe. Sorry, can you turn your microphone on, Councillor Doe, for the benefit of everyone?
We do need to build in the provision for monitoring and review after a year, so that we actually we get that done properly. And that's specifically within that recommendation should be there.
So this is the fun bit. I'm getting ear from legal. So do you accept that recommendation?
I'm very happy to accept the amendment to my recommendation that we include a paper back on how the monitoring is going to be done and when is it coming back and to whom it's coming back.
And do you know what? Have you got a seconder? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Okay, I'm going to call that for the vote. So those in favour of that proposition, which is 1.1.2 with an amendment to include monitoring and evaluation after a year. All those in favour? I count 6. And all those against? 7. So that falls. Okay. I will move to the vice. Sorry, apologies. I didn't inform the committee. Of course, Councillor Jones had. Sorry. That's right. Obviously, Councillor Cook is asked.
Chairman, I believe your legal officer wants to come in.
No, I'm just picking up a very basic thing I forgot to do at the beginning of the meeting here. Councillor Cook is obviously the usual vice chair of this committee and would usually be moving the proposition of the committee, the main one. Are we okay for Councillor Jackson to act as vice chair in that? Yeah, okay. And is that seconded? Excellent, perfect. Excellent, is that agreed? Excellent. Thank you. Just a few quick moments, just a quick few things before I move to Councillor Jackson to put a recommendation to the committee. I just want to thank everyone who's attended tonight. It's been really good to see really informed, well thought through, well evidenced public engagement. Obviously, this is the last Thursday before Christmas. There are probably many places you'd rather be than in this arena tonight and spending 2.5 hours discussing this issue. But it does show, actually, the importance of that discussion. And I feel this has been, a good session of overview and scrutiny. And I thank all the committee members, especially those, I know a few of them are pretty ill, and I want to thank them for braving to come out tonight. I also want to thank everyone else who's been supporting the meeting. So thanks to Democratic Services, thanks to our consultants, and mostly thanks to the gentleman on the sound desk as well, who never gets any credit, as well as Nicola, who's scribing.
David, it's not the Oscars.
It's not the Oscars. But let's just say that. I just want to say that. It's Christmas. We've all got to do our thanks. I'll just briefly make the points I wanted to make just in there. I think there's really the call-in itself. I do feel, and this has come out in debate in terms of the specifics of the issue that was raised, serious concerns about decision and public support for the proposals. I think tonight we've really tested on both sides about what works and what doesn't work, but also, actually, more importantly, we've got clarification in terms of what the consultation process is in. And for me as a chair, my feelings is that, just to express my view, is that actually we do have other processes. We have the statutory public consultation. And for that reason, we're going to go to the proposition. But that's why I would support that we should note and let this progress. I think the final point, actually, is probably what Councillor Jackson was saying, which is actually, we really need to think about children first, and actually including children and thinking about how we can support children to be safe, children to be healthy as well, to increase the amount of walking and cycling. Notwithstanding the fact that, it's very difficult to get around Medway without cars. We know that. People rely on it to get to school, to job, etc., etc. It doesn't help. But we do need to eventually think about different ways, and actually that's one of our toughest issues we're going to go in the next few years, thinking about how we get around Medway, and I think this overview and scrutiny has actually been really good in understanding of that. So I just want to say thank you for the debate, and to not waste any more time, I'm going to move to Councillor Jackson for a proposition. Chair,
I put the proposition forward. Can I just ask Ruth just one question?
Sorry, apologies.
Sorry, that's all right. Can I just ask, I think it's a fair point. Just, you'll be glad I don't sit on this committee quite often, but I think it's a fair point. But just for clarity, of course it goes back to Cabinet, but maybe you as Regen or however, how will you see a review of the schemes? Will it come to a yearly report? Because I think it's an important issue about the review. I would be asking it in my committees I sit on, and you would certainly, Councillor Field. So, Ruth, could you work out how that would happen?
Yes, certainly. I'm pretty certain we've already got on the forward plan that there is a review of the schemes coming back to ONS. Pretty certain that's the case. If it isn't, then that's how we can do it.
That's something for committee members to bring up then.
Yes, colleagues are confirming that is the case. It's already in there.
So, Chair, you'll be glad to know I propose 1.1.1.
Excellent. So just need a seconder. Sorry, Councillor Jackson. Seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favour? All those in favour? All those against? Okay, that's passed. Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight.